Good morning, bore da, and it's a beautiful morning here in North Wales. Everyone that doesn't know me, I'm Gareth Wyn-Jones. I'm a farmer and a campaigner for British agriculture, and hopefully I'm one of them people that feed you every day, maybe once, twice or three times a day. My question, I think, is to the general public, is what's your opinion on the government's 7 months in power so far? It's, from a farming perspective, I'm going to give you just a few pointers. We've had our Prime Minister, he is now, or before he was a Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, in the NFU conference saying how he's going to protect family farms, and losing a farm is not like losing a business. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Starmer. We've then had the first budget from Rachel Reeves, where they come out with a 20% inheritance tax on, that's our working capital, okay? So we get about a 1% return on the land. Farmers heavily invest into tractors, into innovation, as in milking parlours, chicken sheds, machinery, everything that's needed to produce food affordably. These are massive investments. Sometimes they can be hundreds of thousands or millions even, and they need to be done over a long period of time. Now, our problem is our income is small, so what we're getting back in, but the worth of what we sit on, that value is asset rich, very asset rich. A lot of farmers are. And the problem is, if these governments and this inheritance tax, which comes in April 2026, comes in, it's going to devastate. Not what they said, a few percent. Not, what the government said, not a few percent, 20, 15, 5%, whatever they said in the beginning. But it's going to be 60, 70 or 80% of farms that are going to be affected. And then farmers are going to sell some of that land off, or they're just going to sell the whole lot off. And I can't see any other farmers buying it unless they've got other incomes coming in. So we're going to have Mr. Bill Gates, BlackRock, coming in with a big grubby dollars to buy this land. Or we're going to have multinational corporations coming in from all around the world to invest in farmland in the UK for incentives to offset their carbon. So they can carry on being dirty little buggers over in their country, but they've offset that carbon by planting trees in this country, which again takes food security down another notch. Now, if you think about some of the things I've said here, it's scary, because I'll tell you why. And the first thing is that the poorer people in society are going to have to pay more for food, because food's going to be more scarce in this country, so it's going to have more food inflation. And food inflation, again, will hit the poorer people. Not the rich, but the poorer people. Labour should be protecting them poorer people. That's what they were most probably voted in for. But we've seen what they've done to the pensioners, and they came in to say that they were going to save with net zero. Now they've taken that money and they're sticking it in Ukraine so they can have a war. A bit crazy really, but we won't go down that road. We're talking about inheritance tax, we're talking about farming. So that 20% is going to go 20% inflation on the food for the poorer people in society, which will make them eat poorer food, cheaper food, which will make them sicker, diabetes, obesity, all these things, which is the money they're going to taking from the farmer to put into so-called the NHS, or so-called into, you know, the Ukraine war, or the Ukraine peacekeepers, boots on the ground, planes in the air, whatever it is. So this money will go towards that. But if they had an ounce of common sense, they would start to educate people and the poorer people in society, because they're the ones that are going to be eating the poorer food, and they're the ones that are going to be costing so much money to the NHS. So if we can have the poorer people eating healthier, you know, building a better Britain on our bellies, then people would be putting back into society, as in they wouldn't be on the sick, they would be working, they would be healthier, so they wouldn't be in hospitals, and they wouldn't be claiming disabilities, so, you know, having operations. It's just common sense, and building Britain back better would be on our bellies. Now I'm going to talk a little bit as well about how this government could have used this inheritance tax to stop some of, you know, the bigger investors, as in the Dysons, the BlackRocks, and dare I say it, Clarkson. I'll get a bit of a flack for that. But the truth is, some people have invested into farmland to hide away from inheritance tax. And I think some businesses will do that again, because it's still an incentive with 20%. So how could government stop this? Well, if government thought about this logically, they would have lifted the threshold. It wouldn't have been 3 million. It would have been 10, 15, 20 million on the big estates and the big farms. Because the family farms are the smaller, you know, more smaller farms with less land and, you know, less, hopefully, inheritance tax to pay. But if this government thought about it and said any farm passed on to the next generation as a working farm, so the land goes on to produce, you know, food. I'm not talking about land that goes for solar, I'm not talking about land that goes for building, and I'm not talking about land that goes for other developments. I'm talking about land, if that farmer hands that land down to the next generation as a working farm to produce food, I think, and I hope, and I pray, the government would not ask for inheritance tax, because these are the people that are feeding the country affordably. These are the people that are working 7 days a week. These are the people that are putting food on people's plates, not supermarkets, not governments. So we have to have a look at everything across the board, and the government itself needs to redress and re-look at this policy before it comes out in April 2026, because it's an absolute shambles. The money you're going to get back, let's say it's 500 million, 500 or 600 million, you're giving that away to other countries to develop sustainable food production. Charity must start at home. We have got our military people on the streets, while we have people coming into this country staying in hotel. You know, it doesn't make any sense, and people have had a bellyful. You were voted in on a directive to protect these people. You have broken so many promises as a government, it's unbelievable. You know, from the inheritance tax on farms, from then saying about all this black hole and then giving billions away to Ukraine, pensioners, businesses, NI, you know, national insurance, all these things you have broken. You're breaking Britain, not building Britain. Millionaires are leaving this country because they're not going to stay here and pay your silly taxes. They're going to go and find a country that are going to watch after them. You know, if we want manufacturing, if we want people to invest in this country, we have to give them incentives. And running round after Bill Gates and BlackRock is not the answer, in my opinion. Protect the people that are in this country and make sure we have food security, because if something does happen, we need to be feeding this nation. And at this moment, farmers have never felt so low, so unappreciated, and so peed off. It's your opportunity, Mr. Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, to pull up your socks, to build a better Britain, and stop attacking the farming communities. We're here for you and for the rest of the UK to make sure we can feed you affordably, seasonally, healthily, and every single day. Thank you very much for listening. I hope one day that we do build a better Britain, because I think it's a wonderful country. And at this moment, the political system is greedy, it's unhelpful, and it's destroying businesses and the people that are trying to make an honest, decent living.